and I'm with the city manager's office, and one of my roles in the city manager's office is for business support, and I also work very closely with the Del Mar Village Association, and they're our partner in implementing programs. And I want to thank Jen Grove and Casey Papiatis for helping us get the word out about this workshop. And the planning department will be giving the presentation. And we have Joseph Smith, the director of planning and community development. We have Amanda Lee, the principal planner in planning, and Jennifer Gavin, associate planner. And at this point, I think I am going to turn it over to Joseph Smith. He has a little bit of a background to share, and take it away, Joseph.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jen. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning and for making time that we could be in front of you before we go through our formal process here kicking off next week. So I'm really happy to bring this item forward. It's been talked about for quite a while. I know personally we've been talking about parking changes for several years. And I think just given the culmination of everything here at the city, of course, with COVID and just the recovery efforts for the businesses, this is a change that we do believe will help both local businesses as well as commercial property owners in the city be able to try to promote and sustain business. And so with that, we've talked about updating the parking code specific to restaurants and retail service, and the team will go through all that. But in particular, this idea has been floated since an early form of it was last May when we were trying to figure out how to help businesses. And then through the DMVA and especially Jen Grove and Casey with their suggestions for the city to try to find long-term solutions, parking came back, and it looked like it was something that the community was really interested in. So because of that, we were able to, it was timely because we were going through our budget process for the 2-year budget, and we had asked council and especially the council liaisons if they would like to put some money forward to help fund this study. And it's a study that's part of this exercise that we're in right now. Council did agree to that. We were able to get the money in the budget right at the tail end there. And also we were able to get this into our work programs and move it up on the list of work programs. And so I think everybody is aware, if you're following city business, that much of what we do in planning right now is broken into tiers. We have a lot of long-range programs that we are mandated to do by the state, but this is one that's for the community, and it's a local initiative if you look at it that way. And it's one that we've been able to find time to do, and thanks to Jen, Gavin, and Amanda for leading this effort. And so with that, we'll talk to you about what the proposal is, and then we would just request that you could just follow this through the process. And it's going to go quick because we're already ready to go. So with that, go ahead, Jen and Amanda, take over the presentation. And again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Just want to make sure I'm unmuted. Yes. Okay. Okay, yeah, so thank you everyone for coming today. As Joseph mentioned, these code changes are coming as part of the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 budget approval, where council directed staff to prepare draft parking amendments to support local businesses. And so the intent is to address parking related concerns identified by the local businesses to facilitate economic recovery in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The city has previously studied and processed parking changes back in 2016. Those changes were certified in 2017, including the site-specific parking management plan process, which does allow restaurant parking a rate of 1 to 300 square feet in multi-tenant commercial centers. And we have 2 examples of that. One was with the Del Mar Plaza specific plan, which was adopted in 2019. And then the site at 1201 Camino Del Mar also was approved in 2017 and revised in 2018. So the objective of today's public workshop is to attain feedback from the local business community and other interested persons to these code amendments, This is our first step, so we do want that feedback as we develop this language before we do get to council. So do appreciate you being here to provide that feedback. And we are specifically seeking input to align local parking regulations with industry standards and best practices, including reduced parking rates for restaurants per prior studies and reports, to implement the city's adopted goals, such as our community plan and our climate action plan, and to address other associated parking related conflicts that might be identified by the business community. So if you have any other ideas for that, please provide that type of feedback. That's some of the information we're looking for. So this is a list of the existing restaurants that we understand to be current in the city of Del Mar, broken up by those that are in our central commercial zone, the table service restaurants, the other restaurants in our other commercial zones. Our retail restaurants, which I broke those up separately since they're a separate parking rate actually. And then our plaza specific plan and hotel specific plan. So those two areas, the hotel specific plan and plaza specific plan, they do have their own documents for zoning related development documents, whereas the proposed code changes that we are bringing forward would be to our general parking code. So I just want to make that clear. Okay, so the first proposed code change that we're bringing forward is to allow existing commercial buildings that are 5,000 square feet or less with non-conforming parking in our central commercial zone to be able to change out tenants. So if they're retail, restaurant, or personal service, to make it so that those types of tenants can move in and out of the existing tenant spaces, as long as currently we have existing tenant spaces that have existed as of January 1st, 2020. Existing parking is as long as the existing parking spaces that are relied upon for that site are maintained, including if there's any off-site parking spaces that are agreed upon in a recorded parking agreement. This change would allow tenant spaces to be combined as long as you're not changing the building footprint or expanding any outdoor use areas. Currently, the code changes proposes no more than 3 restaurants per site, and it would also require that the proposed tenant uses complies with our current horizontal zoning requirements. The second proposed code change would allow a restaurant established to have 1 accessory food or beverage cart that is exempt from required parking when the food or beverage cart is not more than 100 square feet in area. The food or beverage cart is open on the air to all sides. There's a maximum of 1 accessory cart per site. And it also requires that the cart location does not interfere with access required parking spaces and that the cart has received design review permit when necessary. And then our third proposed code change would reduce the required parking rate for restaurants from 1 space per 90 square feet to 1 space per 300 square feet for those tenants that are 4,000 square feet or less in size. And it would reduce the rate from 1 space to 90 square feet. It would reduce the rate for tenants that are greater than 4,000 square feet to 1 space per 90 square feet. And this would include if you're expanding your outdoor dining space, that would be included in this calculation. So a reduction in the parking rate for restaurants has been a long-standing request of the local business community, which has been supported by BSAC and TPAC in 2016. And so also staff worked with MBI to put together a parking memo, and we did find, and that memo did find that the proposed rate is within the range of required parking of other communities. So the objective today is, like I said at the beginning, to collect feedback prior to going to the Planning Commission, where we'll be asking for a recommendation to the council. And then eventually this will be going to the council. So staff is seeking input on the proposed parking changes, such as, so just for example, in change number 1, does the proposed flexibility change out uses and tenant spaces? Sorry, the first change related to providing flexibility, does the date of January 1, 2020 make sense? Or would a date of the ordinance adoption by council make sense? Or maybe related more to the budget, June 30th, that's an example. Should we apply that exemption for more than 3 restaurants? Are there any other feedback on change number 2 related to the accessory cart? Or are there any other feedback related to change number 3 in the parking rate? And so that's where I leave it here. So maybe we can open up for that feedback.
Beth or Jen, are you going to call the speakers in order to allow people an opportunity?
I would like to do that, but I don't see, I don't know if I have control of that. So,
I think I do, so I can do that.
That would be great. Thank
So
you.
the first person I see is Cushman. I apologize, I can't see your first name.
I
Can you hear me now?
yes.
All right. My name is Andy Cushman. I with Laz Parking, so we do parking there and around Del Mar. So I just saw the notice and was really just trying to come on and learn more about what was potentially changing to see if it was going to impact any of our locations. So everything sounds great.
Great, thank you. Okay, next I see Gregory Glassman.
I'm,
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
yes, Greg, you're on.
I don't know if you can see me. I'm trying to figure out how to see who's in the meeting, but thank you guys for working hard on this and taking the lead on this. My immediate feedback was, we've sort of been the poster children for coffee cart and worked through the process, the DRB, the onerous DRB process. And for about 5 years, we've been paying this in lieu fee. I don't want to make this all about me. I mean, you guys understand that I've volunteered for the last 10 years to be on BSAC and TPAC to try and promote and move forward these things. And we've been successful with your help in making some changes that it feels like really, really ignited the plaza. And that's great to see, right? So the changes that were allowed to happen produced, I think, an amazing Monarch restaurant. But what I'd like to do is sort of move to, and maybe it's a little bit personal, but we would really like to figure out a way, and I've worked with Joseph a little bit on this in the beginning of the summer and the beginning of COVID, is to figure out a way to put dining in that parking spot. And I'm not sure that any of this really addresses, and I'm not sure that anything here is really going to help us move that forward. And so if the intent of this is to identify areas that you could help us, what we've learned is people do want to dine outside. And for us to create some seating out there, I think we would have to, first of all, I don't think our site would, if we had to bring it current to today's parking standards, we would probably lose parking, right? So we don't have the 9x18 size parking that was required when obviously this place was put into service. But so getting a new updated parking plan doesn't feel like it's possible. But we'd still like to pay an in lieu fee if possible and expand our dining into that parking spot. I mean, you know, there's not a person that I've talked to in town that feels that we need to have that parking spot on that corner when we have a beautiful tree and the opportunity to have people sit outside and enjoy outdoor dining. So, you know, while I think some of this stuff is great that we're doing, I'm not sure that it really applies directly to helping my situation out with that particular property. And this may trigger, I mean, in your minds, it may trigger a look at the in lieu fee program itself. So these changes, I mean, it feels like to me the in lieu should be there to help a developer or a person get 1 or 2 extra spots to make their project, you know, conform or be able to be built. Does that make sense? And so like item number 9 on your in lieu fee, program, it says in no event shall a property owner be allowed to utilize the in lieu parking program to reduce the number of on-site parking spaces existing at a property. Well, if the on-site parking spot isn't conforming anyway, and I'm willing to pay, and I have been paying in lieu fees for a cart that now I don't have to pay, I mean, we would be willing to pay, you know, an extra spot to have that put down, you know, and be able to redevelop it. I kind of looked at the property again after speaking to Joseph, and even with the new calculations, I don't feel like we're going to be able to address enough parking there on site. And I would be happy to invest in that more. I've paid for parking studies in the past, actually with Ryan Zeller in 2009. And it was, you know, our site is just such that we can't really officially put with parking access and so forth, more parking. I mean, I don't know if I'm not looking at it correctly or if you guys have any suggestions there. The other feedback is, you know, I think what this will do is it'll help somebody. So that's good. I mean, I think we'll get 2 or 3 restaurants across the street kind of based on this. But I'd like, I'd like you guys to know that we've been here for 12 years and, you know, we're committed to it and we'd like to see some help for our situation in particular. And sounds selfish, but that's really where I'm coming from at this point. You know, I think the ability to build 2 or 3 restaurants across the street, that's going to be great. That's going to activate the town even more. And we're going to see some redevelopment, which we want. Happy to see what's going down at the plaza, but you know, I'd like some feedback on how we can accomplish this. There's 4 planning directors in the last 12 years have all talked to me about this, and they've all said, "Hey, let's figure out a way to do this." So I'm here and I'm available. I appreciate you guys and your hard work, but it just on the initial blush of this, it doesn't appear to address anything there to help us directly with that. Does that make sense? And that may be as little as taking out item number 9 or the additional limitations where it says in no event shall in lieu parking be used to enlarge or extend or expand. I mean, I don't know, you know, I don't know how much that is somebody's opinion or not, but you know, you guys understand what I'm trying to accomplish there. And people want to sit outside and we want to give them that. And thank you. Oh, the last piece of feedback is I think the accessory carts, and I spoke to Jennifer about this yesterday. They're going to have to be closed on the top, so they can't be completely open air. But I guess you guys probably know that. County health requirements are such that you can't have a mobile cart, food cart, or any kind of cart unless it is covered at the top. So it will, if it goes through the DRB process, it will have to have some sort of permanent structure. Otherwise, you're just not going to get health department sign off on it. So
That's great feedback. Yeah, thank you, Greg. Did you have anything else? I'm sorry.
No, I kind of wish that we could have roundtabled this at BSAC. I know that there's a lot of people that have put a lot of time and energy into that, and there would even be probably more and better feedback. But I'm just giving you my personal viewpoint.
Jen, before we move on, sorry, this is Amanda Lee. While we have Greg here, we have a real small group, so I think it's better if we can make this interactive. So a couple of points, and just want Greg to you, thank you for your feedback and thanks for volunteering all these years. You're absolutely right. This did start with Business Support Advisory Committee and Traffic and Parking Advisory Committee, the recommendations, pre-2016. And you probably remember at the time back in 2016, we had recommendations to move forward with a more aggressive parking management program and reduction in parking. But at the time, Planning Commission and City Council just weren't ready to reduce parking rates at the time. So there was kind of a split. And as Joseph mentioned, now we have a little bit of momentum. And we absolutely we're hoping to get Business Support Advisory Committee's recommendation on this. But unfortunately, just with timing, there wasn't an ability, and Zach tried to get a quorum so that we'd be able to host a meeting, but just could not get the group together. There wasn't enough interest. And that's really why we have this open public workshop, is to, try and interact with the business owners and figure out what it is that you need to help you be successful. What are the barriers and how can we best address this as this moves forward? Because this is our platform and opportunity to put this in front of the community and in front of the council. So I just wanted to touch back. So I think that was your first point. On the second, my understanding is during the pandemic, the accommodations that were made to allow for this temporary use of outdoor dining area, that's something that has been successful. And that's something that you're trying to be able to maintain. And we would love to, talk about that and figure out how that works together. It sounds like it's very close and you being able to maintain what you have based on what's proposed there. So we'd like to look into that. And I know part of your concerns relate to the in lieu parking program. And I think what you're referring to, and I just want to help everyone else that's in the room so that they understand, it sounds like you're reading from an application form. And I just want to make it clear to everyone, that is not regulatory. The form is something that we definitely will look into and see why potentially there's a conflict between that and the actual regulations, because the regulations are what apply. So that's what's published in the code. That's what we took through the city council via ordinance. That's what the Coastal Commission certified. That's the controlling document. So a form can be updated, and that's something we'll definitely be looking into. So I appreciate when you're referring to something in a list of 9, it sounds like that's coming from the application form.
Yeah.
So we'll look into that. And then I think your last point relates to the cart. And I appreciate you pointing that out. As you can imagine, we don't memorize codes, and particularly the county code. We don't really work with the county code. So I think for us, we would definitely be referring to the fact that, of course, the cart needs to meet, and comply with county health department standards in terms of its design. So that's an important part. So that shouldn't be a barrier. These are all things that we can address. And again, for the next speakers that come up, any particulars that can help with your situation, that's what we're looking to hear. And Greg, I would just throw it back to you if there's anything else that maybe that triggered, if there's any other points you want us to be looking into, we would really appreciate that because we're taking notes. So thank you very much.
Well, I did also ask Joseph, and I got an answer about, and I don't know, if it was rung all the way up the flagpole, but utilizing the possibility of shared parking with the library, which is done now anyway by default. I mean, our customers utilize that at night, and then of course we've got a majority of our people are local. We're not, we're a local serving restaurant, right? And so people are walking, people are Ubering, people are riding their bikes or so forth. So to the extent that could be looked into further, it's almost impossible also in your in lieu thing to use a shared parking and in lieu. It seems like you get to use one or the other. These seems like tools that should be used, in an effective way to allow something to be done. I can't understand for the life of me why you could allow somebody a new construction and then they get 75% of that to be in lieu, but yet, you're not, but yet the code or the application, or however you want to describe it, is suggesting that I can't simply take that parking spot that was there, put dining there, and pay for additional parking at City Hall. So, and then the final question I have is, this feels like it's built for some other project that's coming, and it may well be, and that's fine. But how many in lieu spots do we have left available in the stock? And at what point does that get exhausted? And are we looking for other greater parking management planning or programs? So.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the added comments, and I'll just address those. And then I don't know if Joseph and Jen or Beth have anything else to add. First of all, in pointing out that shared parking just happens naturally in use of the library, that's more of a description of existing condition and how space is used in our downtown. And so that's an important part of the story as we carry this forward, in explaining that there are parking options for people that are coming to these destinations, coming to eat at these businesses and shop. The other part that you brought up relates to shared parking and in lieu, and that's actually a regulatory standard. That's something that was imposed by the Coastal Commission. It's something that's in the code, and that's one where we don't have wiggle room as to when we can use in lieu. If you're already in a formal shared parking agreement, then you're not able to use in lieu, and that's something that's been imposed on us. We can explore the opportunity of seeing if Coastal Commission's in a place to let that go away. But at this point, that should just be assumed that's regulatory. So that's why I think there's a difference between explaining how just naturally space is used and shared in our downtown. And I'm losing my spot as to that last point, but I think these are opportunities for us to look through. Oh, what your question was about our parking garage and how many in lieu spaces we've used. And we have plenty of capacity. There are very few in lieu parking agreements that are active. I know that you are one of maybe two tops. So we have lots of capacity there. And the other point is this is not put together with any project in mind. So this is to accommodate our local business owners. That's where this is coming from. So this isn't in anticipation of any special project or any concession to some, I guess, business owner coming in from another area who has interest in developing here.
So how was the cart brought up, or was this something that businesses expressed to you that they would like to have? I'm just kind of curious. Is this something that is catching on, or it's an additional requirement that kind of ties the hand of a particular restaurant? So what I've learned about these coffee carts is it's not easy to get the county health, requirements. So the fact that you did limit it to restaurants is probably smart, and that you have to have certain facilities. You have to have a an on-premise bathroom and the proper drainage and so forth. So and a commissary note. So just opening that up to anybody is probably was smart, but just kind of curious how that, because our food truck regulations are written such that you could never have a food truck in Del Mar, virtually. I mean, unless it was on private property and you had whatever that large amount of open square footage is, which I don't think even exists anywhere in the city, maybe on private property, somebody's house. But so it's interesting that the cart thing came, and I'm just kind of curious.
Interestingly, Greg, that came in, was prompted by the questions that you had raised. And I can tell you, so back in 2018, 2019, when we were helping with the plaza, to kind of spur, as you mentioned in your earlier comments, really ignited that positive change there. They had a lot of carts as part of their component as well, at least in their vision and what they laid out in their plan.
Mhm.
And exactly, the scenario for someone that's not in that same context as the plaza, it makes sense that if it's accessory, so if it's, truly relies on that primary use, that primary restaurant. We've had inquiries, I think it was B-side, wanted to have a similar type of cart a couple of years ago, and they would have, needed parking and go through the same, I guess, steps that you went through, which you've explained are exhaustive. So this is an opportunity where we thought that this does make sense. We have received questions, or inquiries and interest from business owners and wanting to maybe have that extra to support maybe a breakfast or a lunchtime
Mhm.
business. And so that's where that's coming from.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Right,
Yeah,
Jen?
Amanda, I had just a quick trailer to add on to that. And again, yeah, thanks, Greg, for the comments, and Amanda for explaining that. I did want to also reiterate your point, Amanda, that this isn't written for a prospective business or project coming into town. One thing that was important, I know, for our team as well as the liaisons, was that existing property owners and existing buildings also are provided some relief. And I'm sure everybody understands that when tenant change outs occur, one of the impediments that we're well aware of, and this is usually through the business license side of things, is that there's not enough parking. So to go from an office use on the street to a restaurant, parking is the impediment. And that's seems to be gate number one that is difficult. And so that first code change is an exemption for those situations, where this allows tenant change outs to be done more easily, to try to bring more growth and that type of thing. Also, businesses that want to expand within the existing building. And that was the other consideration that we were looking at. So I just wanted to make sure that's clear. And then just lastly, Greg, the thought on the library spaces. So yeah, it's a good point to bring up. And one, and this is where it gets difficult with the city street, because those library spaces are on the city street, and for the most part. And so we run into a situation where the city, when a business owner wants to use a city street exclusively for their business, as opposed to spaces that are on an actual parcel, there is a distinction there. And so that's what's going on with those library spaces, is that they're technically in the right of way. And so they're open to everybody. And so it's fine if people are parking there as public spaces to use, to go wherever they want. But that's one of the challenges if we were to go into some type of specialized agreement for the specific use for one restaurant. Anyway, that's all.
Okay, thanks. How many people are in this meeting?
We have 4 other speakers. So I think, Jen, I think we should move to the next speaker, and then hopefully we'll give everyone an opportunity, and then we can come back to additional questions. Thanks so much, Greg.
Thank you. Okay, so next I see Jen Grove.
Hi, everyone. This is Jen Grove. Actually, if you don't mind, I'd probably like to go last, only because honestly, I don't obviously own commercial property. I did send over to Beth a couple of questions, but I do know that there's speakers on the line, and they may address them specifically to their properties. So instead of me doing it in a vacuum generically, why don't I wait to the end to see if those questions are answered or asked and talked about with those speakers that own property downtown, and then I can follow up. But just a cursory say, thank you all for putting this out there, work with our businesses. We truly appreciate it. I know I speak for Casey also. And I know there's going to be a lot of nuances on here, and it can be tweaked and we can work together, but I think we're all rowing in the same direction, or driving in the same direction, however you want to phrase it, that we all want to help our businesses and figure out ways to accommodate cars at the same time, recognizing we're in 2021, where perhaps cars should not be as much of a focus. And so parking should not be as much of a focus. And we should be looking at ways that people are going to be driving in alternative vehicles, meaning ride shares, biking, walking, etc. But with that, let me wait till the end and let the speakers go ahead and talk with you first.
Sounds good. Okay. Jim Coleman.
Jim, you're
I think
muted.
You're muted.
Is there a way for us to unmute Jim, or does he have to unmute himself?
He has to unmute himself. I've been pushing ask to unmute.
Okay.
Hopefully that will like bring up a prompt, but I can't actually unmute. So Jim, there should be a button with a little microphone that has currently a red line through it. I think if you push that, it should open up your microphone.
You could also try the *6, Jim, if you're using a telephone as well. Try *6.
In the meantime, while Jim is unmuting, I see Greg's hand up. Is there something you wanted to say, Greg?
No, I'm sorry. I'm accident.
Okay.
I can also bring on the next speaker while Jim is trying to unmute. So John Wingate.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, beautiful. Well, I want to apologize for my dear friend Jim Coleman, but he certainly inspires me to be more technologically savvy because I thought I was going to be the one that just didn't unmute all day. So thanks, Jim. All right, so I want to add to everybody else's words that thank you for moving this forward. Anything in regard to any potential improvement to parking in the city of Del Mar is just, I have to say, monumental. So it's got to be a task and a half to try to tackle this in regard to the businesses, both large and small. So anyway, thank you. So I'm John Wingate, the owner of Enfuego Cantina and Grill right there in the Central Commercial Zone. I have been in business on Camino Del Mar for 26 years. So parking certainly in the forefront of everyone's minds. But I think Greg would agree, people, they tend to look at Del Mar like it's a place where you can't park. And it's just not, it's really not true. But it's awkward, and it's not, it wasn't until probably we put those giant parking signs that people actually felt like, hey, I could come to Del Mar and I could actually find a place to park. So in regard to the new proposals, I had just a couple of questions in regard to the size capacities, because we have restaurants both big and small. We have restaurants with some parking, no parking. But I believe, and I could stand corrected by one or two restaurants, I believe that the term is that all of us are legally non-conforming in regard to parking. And so, again, thank you to you guys to try to tackle this, because wouldn't it be nice if we were all legally conforming? So my slant on this is that there's a couple parameters as far as larger restaurants. There's some mention of 4,000 square feet. There's some mention of 5,000 square feet. If you've ever been to Enfuego, pretty difficult to measure what's usable, right? It's a tree house at best. It's indoor, it's outdoor. It's mostly outdoor. It's covered, it's not covered. But also in speaking with some of the other restaurants, some of the restaurants are larger than 4,000 square feet. I don't know if anyone's larger than 5,000 square feet. But my concern is and you may have touched on it already, but I would like a more specific answer. Why are those parameters in there at all? Why is there a 4,000 square foot? So I did the math on my place, and I believe what happens after 4,000 square feet, if I'm correct, and I'm not saying I am, that it would be more difficult to try to do the math to get more spaces after 4,000 square feet. And let me add to this that we've got a giant parking structure that will someday be built just to the north of us. And I argued on their behalf that it shouldn't be so egregious for that property owner to put in so many parking spaces as well. But is there one of you that may be able to speak to those square footage parameters, and whether that's a coastal commission thing, or if it's something that we could possibly discuss and either throw out, which I would love to suggest, or look at I don't want to say on a case by case basis, but basically look at the existing restaurants and saying, okay, everybody should be good here with this size square footage. Anyone want to tackle that?
Yeah, I can start, and then Amanda wants to expand beyond that. So yeah, but thank you for that type of feedback. That's exactly what we're trying to get back in feedback. I believe just looking at the current parking code, that's the way that the parameters are set up, is that currently it's 1 space per 90 square feet up to 4,000 square feet. That's in our existing code, and that it's 1 space for each 45 square feet in excess of that 4,000 square feet. So these reductions are, they are responding to what's currently in our code, but reducing the rates for each of those parameters. So 1 space per 300 up to 4,000 square feet, and then 1 space for 90 square feet in excess of the 4,000 square feet. So that's where it's coming from. And then I don't know, Amanda, if you have any other background on that.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. What you explained is absolutely correct. And just to go further, you know, a lot of the space is coming from the initial parking amendment process that started pre-2016. And at the time, parking reduction for restaurants was something that was discussed. And I believe these are the same rates that were discussed at the time. So that this is a starting point. We can definitely look at modifying the proposal. And I think part of it, we'll probably just need to understand a little bit more as to size of restaurants that we have in town and maybe how that compares. A lot of this is going to be looking to get the community comfortable, because most of you know, over the years, people just haven't been comfortable to change the parking rates for fear of what that might do to change the community feel. And so this is something that it's the reason for the parking study that Joseph mentioned, to really get that measuring stick and show what industry standards are, and tie in what Jen Grove brought up, you know, the way that people actually get to restaurants now and utilize, and the objectives that we have just for a healthy environment from our climate action plan, in terms of not making it so easy for people to park, because you want to encourage people to carpool together, to bike over, walk over, combine their trips, and all the things that this type of parking change would do. So to get back to your question in terms of separating between a smaller type of restaurant and a larger type of restaurant, that's something that we can look into. And it would be helpful, John, for us to understand a little bit better your situation, I think, in terms of numbers, as we move this along to the city council. So thank you.
Yeah, and I have one more thought on that too. Thanks, Amanda. And yeah, thank you, John, for your comments. You know, I'll be candid about this. Why is it in the code? Why is there a cap, so to speak, or why does it get harder when you hit a certain threshold on square footage? I don't think, none of us, at least on our side, were here at the time when that was written. But parking is one of those growth control mechanisms in the planning world. That could be a reason why that up to 4,000 square feet seemed acceptable just generally across the city, and over 4,000 square feet, it seemed like that was getting a little large. And so there was a concern that that scale of a restaurant brings in more people. And, you look at restaurants in the region that are over 4,000 square feet, and is that appropriate for Del Mar? Maybe that was the line of thinking then. But I will say that, one thing that we're also thinking through is how these parking changes relate to a scale of development in Del Mar. It could be argued one way that these code changes, making it facilitating like the tenant changeouts and even increasing square footage amounts would preserve the scale of development, especially here in the village, as opposed to somebody trying to make the parking numbers work with a larger project, bigger parking garage, more, more excavation, that type of thing. So anyway, we are looking into that, and we are trying to think through those ramifications of how this also affects either maintaining what we have and giving property owners more flexibility without looking to do a full redevelopment to make it work, or also just kind of helping with the vision of the town. So just a thought.
Did you have any additional questions or concerns or ideas for us to look into?
Depends. Am I back on?
Yes, you are.
So also going through the other highlighted portions of, and this is a more self-serving question. It does mention indoor versus outdoor. And I've always thought it strange that, in the past, pre-COVID, indoor and outdoor square footage was dealt with relatively the same. And in these post-COVID times, obviously we know they're completely different, right? So the outdoor space is intrinsically more beneficial during times like this. Is this going to be our only pandemic? I'd love to say yes, but if we go through another phase or anything else like that, restaurants in the future are all going to want more outdoor square footage. Is that to be, parked the same way? Again, the more self-serving part is I would say 75% outdoors, 50% covered or 60% covered. And so is there a caveat? Should there be a caveat in there as far as that parameter? And I understand, Joseph, thank you for clarifying. You put it really well, how you don't want a 10,000 square foot restaurant to be able to come, Lord knows where they're finding parking. But obviously, as a longtime resident of the business community in Del Mar, you don't want that super large restaurant. But personally speaking, mine doesn't feel like one of those spaces. It's so much of it's outdoors. Quite honestly, people still use it as a thoroughfare to get from the alley to Camino Del Mar. So that open space is for everybody essentially. But there may be a caveat put in there that we're open to the discussion. And if we shelf this, and I think Greg and I may be two people that you want to rely on in the future. I'm not sure who else is in the room today to be able to check in with as far as this indoor outdoor space is concerned. But that may be the caveat that I would look for. 4,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet. Certainly, I don't know how much indoor square footage Hillstone was planning on bringing, but the next guy, you're right. I don't think we want a 6,000 square foot restaurant. So there does need to be that parameter in there. But maybe we just cautiously look at indoor square footage versus outdoor square footage, because we are going to want to encourage restaurants to have that outdoor square footage in order to stay in business during, say, another pandemic or anything in regard to this. I think we've shifted people's understanding about how dining outdoors can survive, especially in Del Mar, in year round, really. So that's all I would add.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Jim Coleman, are you still there? I'm not sure if you were able to figure out the mute. Maybe not. I see Greg Glassman has his hand up.
We have Casey too, who hasn't
Oh.
talked yet.
I
Oh.
didn't mean to have my hand up. Sorry.
So sorry, Casey.
Leave my hands alone.
Good morning, you guys. I don't have much to say
Good
because
morning.
I spoke too much last night. And I'm going to let Jen says it all anyway. But there is one thing that I just kind of wanted to point out, that with the change of use modifications that you're planning, I think that they're great. And I think that they need actually more emphasis because they also help bring us into compliance with the horizontal zoning, which we have. So if we're changing something from an office to retail or restaurant, that is something we definitely want to encourage.
I had a question for you, Casey. That's a good point. I mentioned this in response to John's comments. One thing we're trying to understand is, do these parking changes help the character of Del Mar? I think there could be a fear that the parking changes drive additional growth and turn the city into something that maybe the residents don't want. But with this existing, the provision you're talking about, the tenant change outs, does that help preserve what's in place? Are property owners, do they feel the need to have to either sell or redevelop without that exemption? That idea, right? If the exemption's there, does it give a property owner more options to be able to work with what they have?
I would say it definitely gives them more options, and I think that it's important to have it in place because it gives more value to their property. We have a whole lot of property owners that don't live here. They inherited it from someone else. They don't really care about their property as long as they get their check. And that's really unfortunate, but there's so much interest in Del Mar right now that people are paying, in my opinion, more than the property's worth to open businesses here, which is encouraging these people to sell their properties. Most of them have no interest because they weren't any kind of business people to begin with. They just got their checks and then they inherited this property that still gives them checks, and they don't have to worry about it. And so, they don't even go as far as painting their building or cleaning their awnings. So I think that having that option makes that property worth more, and they are being contacted, I guarantee you, by people that want to bring something more to Del Mar. Now, I think about the horizontal zoning, and I used to live in Rancho Santa Fe, which is an adorable little town that is all real estate offices. That's it. I think there's one jeweler and there's a secondhand store off the main drag, and there have been a couple of shops that have come and gone over the years, but it's just, there's nothing there. The people that come to that town, they're like, well, there's nothing here. So, Del Mar is so unique that we have some cute shops. We don't have very many, and you really need for everybody to survive, you kind of need more of a critical mass. I'm not talking critical mass like a Highland Center or one Paseo. Nobody wants that. The restaurants bring people in. We've always been told through all of the studies that we've paid for that Del Mar could handle more restaurants. More people would come if there were more restaurants. And we've added them, and we've seen that that is absolutely true. I agree that we don't want to become Encinitas. We don't want to be the bar hopping town. So you have to keep a close eye on what's being developed, but I think that having the options is always a good thing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Casey, for sharing that. And I had one more question for you on horizontal zoning. We're using that term, assuming everybody understands what it means. And one question I wanted to ask you, and maybe the others, is, do folks know what horizontal zoning means?
No.
Okay. That's helpful, right? Because you're using it also to
That is true.
demonstrate.
Only the people that it directly affects. I could tell you Bob Angelo knows what horizontal zoning means.
Can you share, Casey, how you explain horizontal zoning to folks that don't know what it means?
Yes. So to me, horizontal zoning means having your street front shops being restaurants, retail, something for the public, not a service oriented. So not your doctor's offices and your real estate offices, that kind of thing. Something that is more active, interactive for the whole community.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's just a little note that I made that we can help clarify that too through this process to make sure
I think
folks
that's a
understand.
good idea.
Okay.
The only thing I would add as a clarification is personal services are something that's allowed, because that is considered
Like
and-
hair salons or
yeah, nail shops. Those
Mhm.
are
Yeah.
activating uses. I think that the
Yes.
medical office setting, we classify those as offices, the description. But you did an excellent job. Thank you.
that's the common person's best knowledge.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Casey. I see that John Wingate has his hand up.
Oh, did I pull a Greg? Oh, man. Sorry about that.
I'm
I'm
raising
good.
mine
No
now.
problem.
John,
Yes.
I'm going to agree with you. And I'm recalling many conversations in BSAC regarding other communities exempting outdoor dining from the calculation for parking requirements. And that includes, and I invite, if there are people listening that are in the community, I invite them to go walk down to La Jolla Shores. What we're seeing throughout the county is a kind of a resurgence of outdoor dining that's happened because of COVID, and I think people in general really like it. It's nice. The one benefit, I guess, that I can say from COVID is that people could envision not having a parking spot, on the corner there under a beautiful tree, but actually have people sit out and have coffee and park their bikes and walk and have a community, a gathering spot. So to me, this is here to stay. I think our city, if less than any other city, we were a community of restaurants that didn't take advantage of parklets and of these extended. Now, they're being, they're having to go through a process, but you're going to see many of them stay. And La Jolla Shores is a great example. I wouldn't be surprised if they block off that street permanently because the community really embraced it. And I think our community will and should and I think that's exciting. So some of the tools in your toolbox, planning people, is this idea that you can look at exempting outdoor dining from a parking requirement, because that's in many other municipalities, and I'm sure you know that. So that's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. Okay, Jen, are you ready to come back around to you?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, a couple of things just to dovetail on the issue you were talking about just recently about basically outdoor dining. I think that's what both Greg and John has said will resonate among many businesses. As you mentioned, Joseph, that obviously most businesses here do have outdoor dining components. So this is going to have a huge impact. And as you all know, with the discussions last night, and as Casey mentioned, the world of the pandemic, we do need to be looking at these regulations in terms of 2021 and going forward. If you're going to make these changes now, this is a good time to make sure you've captured the fact that outdoor dining is more of a focus in these downtowns and should be. To your point, Joseph, about looking at these regulations and understanding the impact on the community and the kind of optics of expanding the parking. I think it's really important, again, to underscore to the community how things have changed in 2021. And also that the city, as we all know, is very reliant on our small business community. And when you talk about something like 4,000 square feet, and then you look at a business like John Wingate, you don't see a towering 3-story giant metropolis of a business. You see a smaller business that merely wants to provide parking for, its business, a smaller business. So I think the optics of that needs to be translated a little bit on it. Separately, I think it's really important, we have businesses that are evaluating coming to Del Mar. To Casey's point about the fact that there are those in the area that are looking at perhaps selling their properties and wedging it loose from its current situation. They're going to be looking at what you're putting together. I would encourage you, as you go through these regulations, to think about putting together some type, and I would definitely work on this with you, if not draft it and then have you review it. The idea of a manual that lets people that are thinking about coming to Del Mar understand our requirements and how we are wanting to see new businesses and healthy businesses and some of these parking allowances that are being made. Another point is that you mentioned that you're concerned that those in the community will see this expansion, again, the optics. I'm thinking, do you have some type of ability to do like a quick Excel or something that explains how we're keeping in pace with other similar cities, so that, it's not that Del Mar is going out there on the limb different, let's say, than a Carmel or Coronado, or some of the more, what I think our community sees as similarly situated communities. So they don't have the optics of a giant, again, 3-story building or even a 2-story on the west side, that they understand what we're talking about. I think sometimes using terms like 4,000 square feet to the average resident is not going to translate into what that looks like. They're thinking of it in a residential setting, and that's nearly impossible to make those kind of calls. One other issue that had been sent to me by a business was there the ability, like other cities do, to incorporate street frontage into the square foot calculations for these businesses. I believe there are a couple of cities that do that. Obviously, for a lot of them, it will be one spot because they don't have a lot of square footage on the street side. But to the extent that that could help with their calculations, I think it should be something that's considered, especially if it's consistent with what's being done in other cities, again, similarly situated. And the other piece on this would just making sure after this, I know this call is recorded or the Zoom is recorded, to the extent that others have concerns or questions, I just want to make sure after this that you send something to me and I can send it out to everyone that we sent our original Zoom link to, with kind of due dates and when you'd want to have those comments in, to make sure that others that weren't, obviously a lot of businesses are running businesses and are short-staffed. So I understand that some of them thought, well, this is going to be recorded, but I still have an opportunity to put in my 2 cents. So if you could just make sure I have that information, we can make sure to get that out. That's it for me.
Sure. And so, thank you. And so the next stop for public forum is our Planning Commission, which is next Tuesday, October 12th. And so I can definitely send you the agenda for that too. If anybody wanted to participate in that hearing, they can either send us comments or they wanted to speak at that meeting or tune into that meeting. I can definitely get you the information for that.
But separately, if they just wanted to send you comments, just let me know the information for that, because I may be happy listening to the comments here from the business community and then moving on to just providing you comments. I'll try to do just a little bit of a summary on some of the topics that came up. In fact, if any of you wanted to send me, kind of your bullets on what some of the things that came up, I could even put that in the e-blast. They know some of the issues that were discussed and some of the things you might be considering, because that would be helpful to them, because you know how it is, just listening sometimes to an hour-long Zoom isn't on everybody's agenda. So the most we can do to make it easy for them to understand what you all are doing would be awesome.
And Jen, if you're able to help us get Jim Coleman's comments too, because we didn't get to hear from him.
Yeah, absolutely.
If he coordinates. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just wanted to say in closing to Jen, thank you for your help also. And you're definitely able to reach more than we can. We do what we can do. We did notice all commercial properties in the city. We also noticed all residents within 300 feet of those commercial zones. So notice went out, but it's a formal city notice, and I recognize that's not always flashy. It's very business looking and government looking. So I think that the more you can do with the business folks and also the residents too. I mean, this is a conversation that has pull on both sides. I think there's concern of impacts to the residential streets, and we recognize that as well. And I want to make sure that that's known, but also for the businesses to participate, because this is an opportunity to really talk to the planning commission, the city council about what the businesses need, and to help us really understand what 2021 looks like in 2022 and 2023. So anyway, the more that I know that you're doing that, and I just wanted to say thank you for helping push that message out. That really helps us make sure we have a good rounded discussion.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think we all are rowing in the same direction. At the end of the day, I do want to listen to what the businesses have to say, because, you know, they're the ones in the trenches understanding how it's going to impact them and what small things you could do, which may not, when you're looking at a regulation, look important, but at the end of the day, when those calculations are being done, are going to make all the difference. You know, it just sounds weird, but just one space in front of a building could be the difference between non-conforming and conforming. And that's why I want to make sure we're looking at all the angles on here. So, because obviously, ultimately, the businesses want to be conforming. They don't want to be hanging out there, which they have been for all these years, unable to quite meet that requirement, even when the regulations are done. So I think it's important that we look at that. I know I've crunched a couple numbers with a couple of different businesses, and the two things that came up today, whether it's outdoor space and that kind of that threshold of 4,000 and above, if those were changed, that's going to make a huge difference. And you're going to find some businesses that are finally in conformance, and that's going to make some happy businesses, and also might wedge loose some of those businesses to be sold. So I encourage you to look at those two pieces.
And so to understand this, this is still a work in progress. You guys are molding your sort of process here, and by going to Planning Commission, you're asking for feedback from Planning Commission. Is that the process? And so
Exactly.
if I was to attend that meeting and you know, just at least be available for questions or to speak to our specifics, would that be helpful, or is this still, are you just really looking for feedback from them? You're going to them, this is still being formulated, is I guess my question, right? This is not the final sort of, this is what we're going to take to the community. We're still looking for feedback, right?
Yes, Greg.
Yes, so when we,
Go ahead, Jen. Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, yes, when we go to the Planning Commission, we're looking for a recommendation to the City Council. And so as part of that recommendation from Planning Commission, you know, they're going to be taking in the staff report, but they're also going to be listening to the public and listening to the businesses and, you know, seeing what need is out there as part of that recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I was just going to add, it is really important to have the speakers and participation at each of these meetings. We didn't point out, but the TPAC meeting is the very next night on October 13th. Speaker slips at the Planning Commission are something that's entered into the record when we go to Coastal Commission, for example. So it is important to have the business owner perspective in there. Very important to have that as part of the record. It's one thing for us, like in this forum, this is really staff collecting the input. This is more of an informal type of setting. But when you're talking about a public hearing, the Planning Commission hearing is an official hearing. It's required by state law. It is really important to have that business participation at that meeting, as well as at the City Council meeting. So it is important. I know it's hard to make that commitment as a business owner to, you know, have that extra time. We can work on having, you know, this particular type of item, you know, heard at a special time. In this particular case, on the meeting next week, we have a tree scenic view item that unfortunately takes precedence on the agenda. So on that meeting, we can't make an accommodation, so you can expect it to be later, although that meeting's starting at 4:30. So that is a little bit
And
of
is this
help.
a Zoom meeting as well, or is it?
It is, yeah. All of our city meetings are required to be held remotely at this point in time.
Okay.
So Jennifer Gavin is the point of contact on this project. So any questions, we have a dedicated webpage for this project. Jen's contact information is there, and you can reach out to me, to Joseph, and to Beth, who is the business liaison for the city.
Okay, I'll do my best to attend that. I'm on TPAC, so I'll be there on the 13th, but the October 12th meeting, if somebody can send me the link, I'll be there. Yeah,
I'll
That's
send
great.
it to you, Greg.
thanks.
And I did hear back from Jim Coleman. He emailed me back and said he does not have anything to add at this time. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, guys.
Jen, did you have anything else to add? I see your hand up.
Oh, sorry, I've not lowered it. I'll lower it. There you go.
Okay, if now Greg's hand went back up, but if
Oh,
okay. And in closing, I just wanted to thank you all for participating. We heard a lot of really good feedback, and we appreciate you taking the time. And please feel free to reach out to me or Jen Gavin or any of us if you have any questions. And again, thank you for participating, and excuse my cat who really wants my attention. Keeps on walking over my keyboard.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.